All right, we're live. So welcome back to Dapp University. So today we're talking about what's going to happen if Ethereum flips Bitcoin and what has to happen in order for this to take place, because that's what I see everybody talking about online right now, this big possibility, this big setup. Of course, I've been gone for the past week, so if you've been tuning into these live streams regularly and you're like, hey, where are the live streams? Well, we're back this week, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So if you're new around here, hey, I'm Gregory, and on this channel, I turn you into a blockchain master. So if that's something that you're interested in, then smash that like button down below for the YouTube algorithm and subscribe to this channel. And if you want to learn how to become a blockchain master step-by-step, start to finish, then head on over to dappuniversity.com/bootcamp to get started today. And last but not least, as always, not financial advice. Nothing I'm saying in this video is designed to tell you to buy or sell any cryptocurrency based on this information. There's lots of scammers down in the comment section below. Just ignore them. I'll never ask you for my phone number, give you my phone number, or ask you to invest with me. All right, so we got people jumping into the chat here. Let's see, we got Culture Hives, and let's see a couple others jumping in here. Can everybody hear me okay? Just let me know if you can hear my microphone in the chat. So let's see if anybody jumps in the live stream here. I know we've probably lost a little bit of steam after taking a week off here, but hopefully everybody will find it and we'll be okay. Awesome. So let's jump into this big item discussion here, which is Ethereum overtaking Bitcoin. So we got some people jumping in the chat here. So we got Anthony, THX like, all right, Cody Bishop. Awesome. Welcome. So let's talk about what has to happen for this to take place. So if we look at the charts right now, I'm going to pull up the screen here. So let's just take a look at the setup first. So what's been going on with ETH over the past 90 days? All right, what's been going on with Bitcoin over the past 90 days? So basically, if you zoom out and you look at these charts, you see, Bitcoin has hit a local top at least of about, $64,000. And now we're, kind of been on this bearish trend since then. And we're seeing some sideways motion over the past, several days. So if you look at the ETH chart, on the other hand, what do you see? You see sort of a bullish trend over the last 90 days with a correction, just like everybody else in the crypto markets. And then you start to see some, you can say consolidation. Both of these things are consolidation. But instead of the sideways motion, you still see this kind of bullish trend upward. And so, you can interpret this in multiple different ways. You can say this sort of like everything's in a dead cat bounce, kind of trending lower. But if you look at ETH, like we've been trying to push past this resistance here around, $2,800, $2,900. And maybe there's a more important psychological number of about $3,000 here. Okay. And, getting ready for this live stream this morning, we were seeing Ethereum start to get back up to that level, and as it's pushing towards $3,000, it keeps making higher lows, which is a good thing. Okay, so basically, you're starting to see ETH have this bullish trend, at least in the short term, compared to Bitcoin's sideways motion. So, what has to happen for this to take place to see something like Ethereum pass Bitcoin? Well, essentially, what has to happen is Ethereum has to have a larger market cap than Bitcoin in order for it to be the number one cryptocurrency by market cap on a website like CoinGecko.com. So if you go to CoinGecko and you sort the cryptocurrencies by their default listing here, and you see Bitcoin at the top, you see Ether. Basically, you see Bitcoin here as number one because all the Bitcoins in the world are worth more than all the ETH coins in the world. Okay, so you can see the market caps here, 675 billion. All right, versus 323 billion. So essentially, ETH can flip Bitcoin if it simply roughly doubles in market cap right now, with Bitcoin staying the same market cap as it is, or Bitcoin heading in a bearish direction while Ether is headed in a bullish direction. And so, is that likely to happen? Like, are we likely to see Bitcoin basically stay the same level that it is right now and see ETH trend higher? Well, it's hard to say. I doubt that we'll see a crazy divergence where Bitcoin is just, on the way down and ETH just completely decouples from it. But there are some other scenarios that could see ETH flip Bitcoin like this. So basically, you see Bitcoin do this. I'm trying to do this in really simple terms here rather than trying to draw a bunch of crazy lines on the chart. So basically, you see Bitcoin, doing so put it this way, basically, if we see Bitcoin kind of going down and leading the market downward, I doubt that we're going to see just all cryptocurrencies completely diverge from Bitcoin and trend higher to see the kind of pressure that we need for ETH to pass like Bitcoin. But I think a much more likely scenario for this to happen would be seeing Bitcoin basically kind of consolidate sideways while we have ETH over here, while we see something like ETH move faster, or we see Bitcoin essentially in a slower bull rise and ETH in a much faster bull rise. So I don't think we're going to have a scenario where Bitcoin just sits around and chills and does nothing, and we see ETH just take over. But I do see a more likely scenario where essentially ETH outpaces Bitcoin in terms of its growth. So what are some things that could cause this to happen? All right, what has to happen for us to do this? Well, there are really kind of two things that are fueling cryptocurrency prices right now for sure. So essentially you've got, narrative and hype, all right, and then actual adoption. So we can say narrative, hype, and also probably get this into speculation, because there are multiple different use cases for cryptocurrencies, of course. We can basically have cryptocurrencies that we simply speculate on the price. So I think this one's going to go up. I think this one's going to go down. And then I just sort of like, make some bets on that. And I can either make money or lose money, of course. And then you have cryptocurrencies with actual, use cases like, staking or doing DeFi with them, savings and lending. All right. All these different things, which you don't have natively on the Bitcoin network. So if you look into sort of narrative, hype, speculation sort of side of things and actual adoption, what does Bitcoin have going for it that could cause it to actually increase in value versus what does ETH have going for it that could actually cause it to increase in value? So basically, spoiler alert here, ETH has more in both of these camps than Bitcoin does, which could be the fuel that it needs to essentially outpace Bitcoin in terms of price appreciation, which could cause that flipping or flippening by market cap that I was talking about here a minute ago. So for Bitcoin, honestly, it's kind of running out of steam in terms of, narrative, hype, speculation, and also adoption, which we'll talk about some of those things in a minute, compared to all the massive fuel and fire that something like Ethereum does. So, we've seen a lot of stuff fuel this sort of Bitcoin rally that happened earlier this year. The big narrative for Bitcoin being this institutional grade asset, this store of value, safe haven against inflation. Well, I think, I feel like in many ways we've kind of run that hype cycle a little bit, okay? And then you have to start seeing things like, well, of course we do see news about like El Salvador showing interest in Bitcoin. I'll talk about that here in a minute. You see some other things like that, and of course the fabled Bitcoin ETF potentially on the horizon, right? That could be definitely something in the adoption side of things that kind of crosses over this narrative hype speculation. But there's not many things. Like if you drew something on balance to things that ETH has versus things that Bitcoin has, the scales are way more heavily weighted towards ETH. So let's talk about what ETH has in this case. So, in the actual narrative hype speculation side, well, we have the thing that I'm literally talking about in this video is, can ETH flip Bitcoin and become the #1 cryptocurrency by market cap? I mean, that's a trending topic right now. Something we're talking about in this video. And it's a scenario that looks very likely. So you have people who are, rotating out of ETH into Bitcoin, talking about traders, financial speculators who are doing that, trying to position themselves for this possibility. Okay, you have actual things like narrative. Okay, so narratives that are working against Bitcoin right now would be like Bitcoin not being a very green asset, and that's something that people, depending on how true that actually is, you still have people like, well, that's a negative strike for Bitcoin versus ETH, where we have Ethereum moving to proof of stake to help that problem. So that's a check in the right direction for narrative side for ETH. We have lots of hype around ETH with like EIP 59, fee burning, Ethereum becoming deflationary down the road, layer 2 scaling solutions can help the gas fees out on Ethereum. That's all goes over to the adoption category as well. But you start to see those types of things where we have lots of narrative hype that are way weighted in favor for ETH. We also have an ETH ETF possibility in the works as well. So that's just equal with Bitcoin. And then lastly, with adoption, we're talking about crazy amounts for ETH. We talk about, mentioned it many other times on this channel, talk about Visa launching their payment solutions on top of Ethereum. We're talking about, everything you could do with DeFi. We're seeing DeFi absolutely explode in terms of new use cases being created all the time. Of course, we talk about savings and lending on this channel, but we're starting to see more moves towards DeFi derivatives, all types of things where you could take existing financial products, move them over to the blockchain, and do them with ETH, especially with layer 2 scaling solutions that are coming out that's going to make this way more faster. You got ETH 2.0 coming down the road. I mean, there's so many things I'm leaving off here, because the list is just insane compared to what's, happening in the Bitcoin ecosystem right now. I mean, Bitcoin by design is kind of boring. Really just supposed to be this thing that doesn't really change. But that can work against it when you're talking about this battle right here between Bitcoin and ETH. Now, that being said, This is not a guarantee this is going to happen. This is not a guarantee that's going to, if it does, it's not a guarantee that's going to happen. It's not 2021. I see people talking about this like, hey, the flipping is just around the corner. It's in a couple months, all that type of thing. It very well could. I'm not denying, I'm not saying that can't happen at all. I'm just trying to set realistic expectations for if this does happen, you know, we don't exactly know when. That's my whole thing with cryptocurrencies in the first place is, do I think this is a solid long-term bet that I think is going to outperform other things? Of course I do. I just don't have a firm timeline on what that's going to be. Okay, so let me know what you think down in the chat or in the comment section below. Can ETH flip Bitcoin? If it does, when is it going to happen? So somebody says, what is ETH? So ETH is just an abbreviation for Ethereum. So let's see here. What's the difference between BTC and Bitcoin? So BTC is just the symbol for Bitcoin. Somebody says 5 years at least. Somebody says in 2022. That's very possible. So the overall markets as well, let's see here. You know, we have some people kind of wondering what's going on with the overall markets. You know, if Bitcoin is going to stay the leader, you know, kind of what's happening. Are we in bull? Are we in bear? Or are we in a, you know, mini bear that could, you know, be more bullish long term? You know, we've seen this on the 90-day here. Like I said, we've seen Bitcoin start to lose some steam. We've seen lots of other coins draw back. Like I've said on this channel, you know, sometimes it takes us a month or two before we even find out if we're in a long-term bear. And then sometimes it takes even more months then to see how severe that would even be. But, you know, long-term, like I said, I'm still bullish. I've not sold any cryptocurrency in the past year. And it takes time for this stuff to play out. And, yeah, I still think it's a more solid long-term bet. Somebody says, can ETH outperform BTC? Well, ETH has definitely outperformed BTC over the last year. Looks like it's still continuing to outperform Bitcoin, especially during this drawdown. Like I said, we've seen a more bullish pattern on ETH, even over the last, you know, 180 days. Even after this drawdown, it still looks like a trend going upward compared to what Bitcoin's doing, which doesn't quite look the same. So let's see here. Someone says, what is the exact date of EIP 1559 going to launch? Waiting in anticipation. So the last I checked, I don't have the exact date off the top of my head. The last I checked was, you know, slated for July, which is definitely coming up very soon. You know, these things are notorious for getting pushed back. So that's the advertised date. We'll see what the actual date ends up being. But don't forget that there isn't a huge incentive for EIP 1559 to ship roughly on time because of the difficulty bomb that's going off with Ethereum later this year. Somebody says July 15th. All right, so hopefully that's the actual date. Somebody says, from what I can tell, the art community is going to be bound tightly to ETH. Yeah, I think that could definitely be true. So another thing I think about is communities, and I think that's a huge thing that's got going for ETH. You have a lot of people who are innovative in the Ethereum space who have helped like build everything with DeFi. There's a lot of people who are, you know, driven idealists who are kind of wrapped up in this sense of community that have a real long-term vision for Ethereum, and that's definitely the type of thing you don't want to bet against. Somebody says, what do you think will be the energy consumption of ETH2 in comparison to BTC if you had to quantify it by percent usage? I don't know to tell you the truth off the top of my head, but from everything that I can tell, it's supposed to be a lot more favorable. So let's take a look here. So one thing to talk about is, you know, if ETH does flip Bitcoin, what's the long-term outlook for the crypto markets? Because some people talk about this being, you know, making the markets completely unstable, where you sort of have this category shift or shift within the category where Bitcoin's been the market leader this entire time, that if it loses steam, it's like Ethereum takes over, that it's going to be a restructuring that will make the entire market basically unstable. So, you know, I don't know. I don't personally think that that's a major concern for the overall crypto markets. I think when we talk about everything you can do with Ethereum as being a store of value, especially with the tokenomics that are coming up for it with EIP 1559 and proof of stake, I don't really see that as sort of being a big deal breaker for the overall cryptocurrency markets that would send it into being an existential threat in that case. I think there's a lot of people who have resistance to that happening, and it's used as a justification, but I don't see it as being like a major problem. Somebody says, let's see here. Would you recommend staking ETH already to get the rewards on ETH 2.0? So there are definitely risks that you have to understand with staking Ethereum right now, because basically, we are in this transition process moving from Ethereum 1.0 to Ethereum 2.0. So basically, Ethereum 2.0 is a new improved version of Ethereum, makes it, way faster. It replaces our mining consensus algorithm with staking. So proof of work to proof of stake. And that's what turns staking on, lets you actually take your Ethereum cryptocurrency, lock it up, and get passive income for doing that. Okay. So ETH 2.0 is built as a separate blockchain that's being built right now in parallel to the ETH that you use right now. So if you use Ethereum, let's say you go trade a token on Uniswap, you send some Ether around, you're doing all that on Ethereum 1.0 right now. Okay. So if you want to stake, you essentially have to take your ETH 1.0 and manually send it to this other blockchain over here and lock it up for some kind of undetermined amount of time before you can get it back. So for a lot of people, the risk reward is not that great for early adopters. I mean, sure, you can get a higher ROI in terms of staking, actually, right? But then you're just exposed to this possibility that you can't get your funds back if you really need it. Okay, so that's what I say. Be careful for a lot of people. They don't necessarily know that is that there's a lockup period, and that's why you have to wait for these chains to merge before staking turns on. Now, in an optimistic scenario, that can happen inside of 2021, where you could get your funds back. But in a more realistic scenario, I would see that kind of going off into 2022. So let's see here. Yeah, somebody says no staking for me just yet, too risky. Yeah, I think a lot of people will find it too risky because they just don't want to be exposed to the downside risk of prices and not being able to get their funds back if they want to sell. So like I was saying, let me just show you here how the ETH staking rewards will work. So how staking works on Ethereum is basically you get an APR or APY, how you would call it. And there's a technical distinction here, but some people use those terms interchangeably. So essentially, the fewer people stake, the higher the staking reward. Of course, this is denominated in Ether, so the actual cryptocurrency itself is not denominated in US dollar or anything like that. So basically, the fewer people stake, the higher the APR. The more people stake, the lower the APR. And this will probably reach some equilibrium here, down around 5 or 6%, I would think. But basically, some people get attracted by this higher APR. But the problem is, if you're staking and locking it up, this APR can go down over time. And there's nothing you can really do about it if everybody goes and stakes during this time period. Somebody says minimum lock up is 6 months. ETH slated for early 2022. Yeah, I would conservatively say minimum lockup be about 6 months. Some exchanges will advertise different things because you can stake with an exchange service, right? There are different ways that you can do this, but I'm talking about native staking on Ethereum 2.0, where you essentially have to run your own validator node. And some people say hey, have I done it that way? And trust me, you would know if you did it that way because you have to go through a long, complicated set of technical steps in order to run an ETH 2.0 validator and stake natively on the network, versus just clicking something on an exchange and then handing over your funds. Somebody says this guy is jealous of Matic holders. So let's actually take a look at Polygon right now. So somebody's talking about Polygon Matic. So Polygon, previously Matic, all right, is definitely a important project to watch out in the space. It's done really well. Okay. So basically, this is a Ethereum sidechain that started off that way. That's how Matic started. It's basically a separate blockchain that runs to the side of Ethereum that can bridge over, where you can actually run decentralized applications on top of it with smart contracts. So basically, we've seen a lot of DeFi applications migrate over to Polygon/Matic. So as I say migrate, I don't mean like moving completely away from Ethereum, but basically expanding to Matic and keeping their Ethereum copy. So basically what it does is it lets you speed up the transactions, make them cheaper. But there definitely are some trade-offs involved in doing this, right? In doing it on a side chain. So Polygon and Matic have done really well. Again, they branded a Polygon to become a more comprehensive scaling solution for Ethereum. Right now, the primary one is Matic, the blockchain that we're talking about here, which is a side chain. But they're definitely racing to build more scaling solutions like roll-up based technologies with their entire scaling suite. So I have a distinction in my mind of layer 2s versus side chains, and layer 2s being things that actually derive security from Ethereum blockchain itself versus a side chain which kind of maintains its own security and you have to bridge off in between the two. So let's see here. Somebody says Magic is good for, it's probably Matic. Matic is good for ETH. So Matic definitely branding themselves as a scaling solution for Ethereum to partner with Ethereum to work with it. So yeah, I think it's good for Ethereum. Somebody says Polygon doesn't like the word sidechain. Let's see here. Somebody says, how long do we have to mine Ethereum? That's a good question. So basically, let's look at the difficulty bomb. So there we go. We can actually look at this latest update if I just search on Google. So essentially the difficulty bomb delay into Q2 of 2022. So this is an EIP improvement proposal. I don't know if this has actually been improved, but essentially we have a time period that's going to make it harder. So essentially what's going to happen is Ethereum's going to merge with proof of stake, which essentially if you're going to mine that chain, then you basically won't be able to actually do it because the consensus mechanism has changed. Essentially, when you move to proof of stake, you turn staking on, the miners get replaced by validators, and we stake instead of mine. Or we stake and we participate in that consensus mechanism rather than mining the cryptocurrency itself. So essentially, whenever we migrate and everybody starts using that chain, that's going to be the common consensus. And that's essentially when mining will be turned off for the main Ethereum chain. But there's also an incentive to move over and not maintain the old Ethereum chain because of the difficulty bomb that'll be going off. And I don't have a firm date on exactly when that is. I was trying to look at it here on Google. But that is also something to take into consideration. But some people say, like, when's that going to happen? So the merge optimistically would happen in 2021. More realistically, probably early 2022. Somebody said, do validators mine data? So it's kind of like mining, but essentially you are the one that's responsible for putting transactions into the blockchain, but you don't do that by solving cryptographic puzzles like miners do. That's the miner's job, is basically you solve these cryptographic puzzles, you guess these really large numbers, and if you get it right, then you include the transaction, or you include the block onto the blockchain, and then you're compensated with that from the block subsidy, the block reward. You won a puzzle, and then you get paid for doing it. So validators are different. Validators validate blocks, so they're still responsible for, determining the integrity of it. But essentially, they stake their cryptocurrency in order to act honestly, or sort of incentivize them to act honestly, right? And if they are honest, then they make money, and if they are dishonest, then they can be penalized. So you have to just have skin in the game, essentially, to be a validator in that case. Somebody says, can I buy Bitcoin with coal? Somebody says, how do I apply to be a blockchain developer even though I'm a newbie? So if you mean, how do I apply for a job? So this is a great question. So basically, you have, if you want somebody, if you're brand new and you never had a blockchain job before, or a developer job, or even a job, you have to have somebody to take a chance on you. Okay, so what's the best way for somebody to take a chance on you? Well, basically, you prove to them that you're going to provide value to them and their company. And so how do you do that? Well, first and foremost, you have to have the technical skills. So you prove to them that you can do that. So go off and build something yourself for real. All right, open source the code, show them what you're capable of, and then create a portfolio that shows them how to do that. And then basically, that's going to prove your technical skills. But if you're brand new and don't have much work experience, people are going to still care about your soft skills. Like, are you reliable, honest, trustworthy, good communicator? And you can prove all that stuff inside the interview or by showing other past, track records. And then at the end of the day, if you're brand new, not everybody's going to give you a chance. So your best option is basically to apply to as many places as possible to increase the likelihood that someone will actually take that chance on you. And you're inevitably going to get rejected a couple times, probably. But that will also help you figure out like what you need to work on in order to become employable. So that's the really quick blueprint. But we're talking about that more actually in the masterclass coming up this week. So you should definitely register for that to find out. We're going to go over like coding questions or coding challenges, interview questions, all that type of stuff. What are some prerequisites for learning Solidity? I only know JavaScript. I would just say jump in and learn it. Doesn't have to be you don't have to have prerequisites. You can start with that as your first language. Somebody says, with high gas fee, why Ethereum users are not moving out? It's a good question. So a lot of Ethereum users are still making profits despite the gas fees, okay? Ethereum has so many network effects. There's so many different decentralized exchanges on it, assets that can be traded, DeFi, all that type of stuff. It's still providing them with lots of value, okay? So they're still being able to make profits on that despite the gas fees. There's a lot of value in that entire ecosystem, and that's why they're still using it and not going somewhere else. Now, some of them are also moving over to other chains like Binance Smart Chain. But for people who are been in the space for a long time, that are moving large amounts of money around, I mean, there are people who do know that there are considerable risks or something like that. Moving over to a chain like Binance Smart Chain, it definitely is a copy of Ethereum, but sacrifices in terms of decentralization. And so if you're talking about people who have large amounts of money, some of them are going to be cautious about what blockchain they run on. And this is the thing, at the end of the day, people, they always just forget, right? Like when you're using a blockchain, you're putting money on it, you're just like storing money on this giant like shared computer, okay? And like the integrity of that computer matters, okay? So like if you put, like 8 figures on a blockchain, like you have to trust that this thing is actually going to not just like blow up. And so we have way more confidence in something like Ethereum that's been around for, over 5 years and has a strong community behind it. Layer 1 Ethereum especially. And if you were to move over to a different blockchain, like these, I'm about whales in this case, then you don't know what's going to happen. I mean, it's probably going to be okay, but you have to really consider risks when you're talking about that amount of money. And there's lots of people with that amount of money trading on the ETH chain. They're willing to pay gas fees. Somebody says, do I have a tutorial on a minting function that operates every day or once a day? So there's a couple different ways to do this. Essentially, you could change somebody's balance based on the block timestamp, or allow them to claim different tokens based on the block timestamp, or you could, just mint things on a routine basis. Somebody says, how long will the demand for developers be this high? So demand for blockchain has been crazy for a long time. Even throughout the last bear market, it was still high. Okay. I mean, it's just like everything else, there can be some hype where, some short-term opportunists, the hype driven by short-term opportunists, can die down a little bit. But still, fundamentally, when you're talking about the overall trend, it's still really strong. It's still growing like crazy, and it's growing faster than the supply of people who actually have the skills. So if you're talking about what's the long-term viability for this opportunity, very, very high. All right, everybody, so that's all I got for today. As always, smash that like button down below for the YouTube algorithm. If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel. That really helps these videos out because YouTube cares about engagement. And when you smash that like button, it really shows them that you like these videos and they're more likely to share it to other people. So as always, if you're as fascinated with this technology as I am, you want to get your hands dirty, how can you get started today? You go to my YouTube homepage. You can find my free courses there. I like Udemy courses, but they're totally free. And if you like those and you want to take the next step, or hey, maybe you want to take a master shortcut entirely, I should become a blockchain master step-by-step, start to finish over at dappuniversity.com/bootcamp. All right, you don't have to be an expert to get started today. I've helped people with zero coding experience become real-world blockchain developers in a matter of months. So that's all I've got. And until next time, thanks for watching Dapp University.